Well, welcome. We are so excited to see you here this morning, wherever you're tuning from. Before we get started in worship, a couple things for you to know. First, if you go to our website, selmafirstbaptist.org, you can go to Watch Now and actually pull up the lyrics so you can sing along and worship with us. Also, we're going to be having communion today. So if you want to grab some sort of liquid, some juice, and some bread or a cracker, just so we can have communion together. So I'm going to say a prayer and we'll worship. God, we thank you for who you are. We pray that as we come into this place, as we come into this room, as we come into this time, God, that our hearts be ready, God, to experience your presence, to experience your love, to experience your peace. So God, we lay ourselves down before you. We break down every wall and every barrier so there's nothing standing in between us. God, we love you. And our hearts cry out to you in this moment of worship. We love you in your name. Amen. I was buried beneath my shame, and what could carry that kind of weight? It was my tomb till I met you, and I was breathing but not alive. All my failures I tried to hide. It was my tomb till I met you. You called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. Now your mercy has saved my soul, and now your freedom is all that I know. The old me knew Jesus when I met you. You called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name and I ran out of that grave. Yes, I did. Out of the darkness into your glorious day. Needed rescue, my sins were heavy, but chains weight at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter, I was an orphan. Now you call me a citizen of heaven. When I was broken, you were my healing. Now your love is in the air that I'm breathing. I have a future, my eyes are open, 'cause when you call my name, oh, I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name and I ran out of that grave. Yes, I did. Out of the darkness into your glorious day.
When the music fades, all is stripped away, and I simply come, longing just to breathe something that's of worth that will bless your heart. I'll bring you more than a song, for a song in itself is not what you have required. You search much deeper within, through the way things appear. You're looking into my heart. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I've made it, when it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. King of endless worth, no one could express how much you deserve. Though I'm weak and poor, all I have is yours, every single breath. I'll bring you more than a song, for a song in itself is not what you have required. You search much deeper within, through the way things appear. You're looking into my heart. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I've made it, when it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I made it, when it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. When the music fades, all is stripped away, and I simply come, longing just to breathe something that's a word that will bless your heart. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I made it, when it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. God, we thank you in this moment. God, I pray that is the song on our heart this moment, God, that God, it's less about us and more and more and more and more about you. God, may we come faithfully back into the heart of worship. God, asking for forgiveness for the way that we make it about us. God, and back to the focus. God, that it's about you. Let us search deep within this morning as we shed off our selfish ways, as we shed off the things that make
this about us. God, instead, may our focus and our heart be set on you. As we hold fast to your promises, as we hold fast to your truth, God, may you be the reason we sing. May you be the reason we worship. God, may it not just be on Sunday, but may it be through every week, every day. God, may we worship you. We love you. We give you this. And all God's people lives said, amen. So we're just going to enter into a moment of offering. As we do every week, and I know I say it every week, but it's just a continuation of our worship, a continuation of our faithfulness, where we get to say, you know what, God, I worship you, I trust in you, I believe in the mission that you have here at Selma First Baptist, and that's why we give and we give faithfully. So I'm going to say a prayer for the offering at this moment. God, we thank you. We thank you for allowing us just to be here in your presence this morning. Wherever we're at, God, you know our heart, you know our desires. So God, we thank you. God, as we give and we give faithfully this morning, God, I pray that our eyes be open. God, that we can see the blessings that you promise that will flow over us when we give. God, may they not pass us by, but may we actively look for them. God, we love you. Please bless this offering as you always do, so it can continue to bless Selma and beyond in your name as we strive to build your kingdom. God, we thank you. We love you. We give you this in your name. Amen.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning to everyone at home. I hope you're comfy on your couch in your pajamas, or maybe you're the type of person who goes ahead and gets dressed up anyway. But good morning to all of you. And you know, I've got to tell you, this is just a little strange. It's kind of awkward. So the last time I got to preach was last summer, and we pre-recorded the message. So I did that at home, and Justin was there. He was filming me, and Allison and the kids were there. So I know that was a little different, but at least I was at home. It was kind of comfortable, and we knew we were pre-recording. But here I am this morning, and preaching on this new video digital format at church, and it's an empty building, and it feels a little surreal, I guess, a little strange. But I'm glad we get to be here together. I'm glad we get to stay connected to God. Not just through our relationships that we formed here at church, not just through the friendships we have, and not just through our attendance here at Selma First Baptist, but I'm glad we are connected this morning because we are choosing to worship God together. That is something that will be eternal for us. That is something that our bond that can never be broken. In fact, when we were singing this last song, The Heart of Worship, I was just really kind of struck by those words. God, it's all about you. It's all about you, God. It's not about me. So, folks, we shouldn't be worried about what songs we're singing. We shouldn't be worried if that's a song I like, or if that's a song that I can connect to, or I feel like I can really worship to that song. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's not about us. We should be overwhelmed by the presence of God. We should be overwhelmed with just pouring our heart out in awe and reverential worship to Him, because it is about God. It's not about us. So, before I get too much further, as you can see, I am not Pastor Jack Negretti. Pastor Jack and Sherry are off celebrating their anniversary, so they took a couple days off to get away from the Central Valley. They're over at the coast enjoying some time together, but they are with us via video. So, Pastor Jack and Sherry, happy anniversary to you folks. Hope you're having a good time and that you're getting to strengthen the bonds of your marriage during this time away. My name is Arlie Rogers. I am one of the board members here at church, and I've been attending church here with my family for almost 13 years, which is kind of hard to believe. I can't believe that it's been almost 13 years. In some respects, that has gone by so incredibly fast. But I love the people here at church. I love you, the people I get to worship God with. And I thank you so much for being my church family. And this morning, it's my honor and my privilege to be able to share with you this message that I know God has specifically prepared for you. So here's another thing that's just a little bit awkward. 2020. Wasn't 2020 kind of a strange year? I know we've said that before, but 2020 was incredibly strange, right? Really, really bizarre. All these weird things happen that we've never seen before to the degree that we saw and witnessed them last year. And they all happened and culminated together in one year, which was kind of a strange thing. So while 2020 was weird and it was strange, what I know is this, and I'm sure you'll agree with me on this, is that God was still in control. Right? Through it all, in spite of the chaos, in spite of the confusion, in spite of all the things that happened, God was still in control. He didn't abdicate his role on the throne. He didn't take the year off and go on vacation. Right? He was still there. And I think if we were honest with ourselves, we could probably look back at the year and see that God did have blessings for us, in spite of the pain that many of us felt and many of us experienced, in spite of the difficulties that so many had to go through this past year. I'm sure we can look back at 2020 and see that God was still in control and that God's blessings were still evident in our lives in some way. So sometimes it just takes a little bit of change of perspective. So with that in mind, I kind of want to read this thing to you. I'm not sure if the camera will pick this up, but I'm going to read this thing. I'm calling it a poem. It's not exactly a poem, but I'm going to read this to you, and it's all about changing your perspective. So just listen in here. Today was the absolute worst day ever. And don't try to convince me that there's something good in every day. Because when you take a closer look, the world is a pretty evil place. Even if some goodness does shine through once in a while, satisfaction and happiness don't last. And it's not true that it's all in the mind and heart, because true happiness can be attained only if one's surroundings are good. It's not that good exists. I'm sure you can agree that the reality creates my attitude. It's all beyond my control, and you'll never in a million years hear me say today was a very good day. Now, of course, you'll never hear Pastor Jack say that because every day was the best day ever, right? But listen to the exact same words. I'm going to read this exact same thing, but from a different perspective. I'm just going to read it from the bottom up and listen to how the message changes with the exact words just from a different perspective. Today was a very good day, and you'll never in a million years hear me say it's all beyond my control. My attitude creates the reality. I'm sure you can agree that it's not that good exists only if one's surroundings are good. True happiness can be attained because it's all in the mind and heart. And it's not true that satisfaction and happiness don't last. Some goodness does shine through every once in a while, even if the world is a pretty evil place. Because when you take a closer look, there's something good in every day. And don't try to convince me that today was the absolute worst day ever. I want to encourage us to take that type of attitude, that type of perspective as we move into 2021. And I know 2020, it felt like a lost year. It felt like a one we had to kind of throw away. And I'm really disappointed about that because part of what made 2020 to me kind of special and exciting was this idea of the year 2020. There was just this unique symbolism and some of these metaphors that could have come out of it. So think about your vision, your actual eyesight. When you go to the doctor and you're having your eyesight measured, if you achieve 20/20 vision, that means your vision is perfect, right? Your vision is completely clear. You are seeing exactly the way your eyes were designed to allow you to see. Everything is working just right in your vision. And so knowing that, we had this year, 2020, and we had these great plans about talking about vision and taking the walls down from the church and getting out and doing ministry and things like that. And then all this stuff happened. We had incredibly tense racial division. We had a presidential election that was contentious beyond anything that I can remember in history. And that created division and strife and anxiety. And then before all that, during that, after that, and even to today, we had this thing called the pandemic, right? We had COVID-19 that caused death in so many people's lives here in America and all around the world. And all those things kind of robbed what could have happened in 2020. But again, I'll point you back to the poem. It's all a matter of perspective. Because what I know is I can go back and I can remember the things that God did. I remember there was a family that reached out to the church and said, you know, I lost my job. We don't have a place to live. the church, not our church, but another church was able to get them into some housing. Our church was able to gather up some money and give them money so that they could buy foods for the holidays and presents for their kids. Another organization we hooked them up with was able to get presents for their kids. So many good things happened last year in spite of all the devastation. And that's what I want to focus on this morning. So a couple of weeks ago, Pastor Jack talked about looking at this year, 2021, and this new year that we have in front of us. And one of the things he mentioned is not to make New Year's resolutions. So I understand what Pastor Jack was talking about. He said, don't make these resolutions because they often get broken. New Year's resolutions are too often these overly ambitious goals that in reality we really don't want to accomplish. We kind of say we want to accomplish these New Year's resolutions, and we make a New Year's resolution because it sounds like the right thing to do, but in reality we don't really want to accomplish those things. I don't want to run a marathon. Even though that's my New Year's resolution, I really don't want to run a marathon, so I'm going to break that one right now. I'm not even training for it. But we make these New Year's resolutions, and we know we're going to break them, so Pastor Jack's saying, just don't even bother. Let's not try to do that. Let's not fool ourselves. So continuing on that idea of not making New Year's resolutions, I want to encourage us to do something a little different this year. I want to encourage us to adopt a theme. So a resolution, as I mentioned, it's a goal. It's something you kind of set out there, and often it's overly ambitious, it's overly dramatic, it's something we don't really want anyway, and we know a few years into the new year, we're breaking those resolutions. We're not following that goal anymore. The difference with a theme is this. A theme is something that continues throughout the year, and it's not a set goal that we're trying to achieve. A theme is something that guides and shapes the direction we're heading. A theme helps us course correct. When we start to get off course, when we start to drift over a little bit, the theme says, oh no, come back this direction. So here's the theme I'd like us to adopt for this year. Simplicity. Keep things simple. You've seen the acronym KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. I'm going to change it so it's not so harsh. It's going to be keep it super simple. So when we think about 2021, I want to KISS 2021. I want to keep 2021 super simple. And if we think back about the year we just went through, a lot of things have already become more simple for us. I'm sure many of you can agree that because of some of the shutdowns, because of the things that we had to go through with the pandemic, our lives became a little bit simpler. Our lives became a little less busy and less impacted time-wise. And that, for me, was a great thing. And I'm sure for many of you was such a great thing. Having 6 kids all in school, there was endless amounts of homework and school projects and different events to attend at school and things like that. And the 6 kids are all involved with extracurricular activities. So this last year, there was no school play. There was no sports to attend. There was no swim meets to go to, or soccer games, or baseball games, or anything like that. And life became a little bit simpler. So what I want to do for 2021 is maintain that idea of simplicity and carry it forward into this year. In fact, if you're trying to make a decision for this year, so if something comes up and you're saying, you're trying to decide between a couple different situations or a couple things to do, and if you notice that decision A is going to make your life more complicated and it's going to bring complexity and chaos and strife and stress into your life, well, if you remember the theme of simplicity, maybe that's not the right decision. Maybe the right decision is to just keep things simple for the year. And that's what I'm going to try to do, and that's what I'm going to encourage you to do also. So with that in mind, the title of the message this morning is very, very simple, and it's this: love God. It was said in the Old Testament, Jesus reiterated it in the New Testament. It is the first and the greatest commandment. Love God. Should we follow the other 10 commandments that Moses talked about? Absolutely. Should we talk about and follow all the things that Jesus commanded us to do when he left us with the Great Commission? Of course we should. But those commandments only come after we do the first one, which is love God. These other commandments are, they're important. We need to be doing them. But they don't really matter if we don't follow the first commandment of loving God. So this morning, we're going to take a look at what it means to love God. How do we do that effectively? So if you would, turn in your Bibles with me to the Old Testament. We're going to go to Deuteronomy chapter 6. And I have recently become kind of fascinated with this passage of Scripture and the book of Deuteronomy in general. So while you're turning to Deuteronomy, let me set it up for you. The children of Israel were enslaved by the Egyptians, right? They were taken into captivity, put into slavery, and they were there for 400 years. That is 20 to 25 generations worth of Israelites under slavery. And at the end of that time, God raised up a leader named Moses. And Moses had this improbable beginning. He was birthed, and then his mom floated him down the river in a basket so that he could be found by the Egyptian royal family and raised in Egyptian royalty rather than killed with some of the other Israelite babies. So Moses had this amazing, unique beginning, and at some point in his life, when he became an adult, he realized God was calling him to something different. God was calling him to be a leader for his people. And so Moses led the children of Israel out of captivity and to the promised land, or toward the promised land. We'll get to that in a second. So Moses went to Pharaoh and said, Pharaoh, you've got to release the Israelites. And Pharaoh said, okay, yeah, we'll do that. And then reneged and changed his mind. And that happened time and again. So God decided to bring the plagues onto Pharaoh. And through the plagues, Pharaoh released the Israelites. So Moses led this nation of people, 2 million people strong, towards the promised land. And Pharaoh still pursued them through all that. And then the Israelites, as you know, crossed the Red Sea. God parted the waters. They were able to cross on dry ground. And when the Egyptian army pursued them, the sea collapsed back in on them, killing much or most of the Egyptian army. And that was at that point where Pharaoh finally turned and went back home and allowed the Israelites to escape to their promised land. So the Israelites were headed towards the promised land. They wandered in the desert for 40 years under Moses' leadership. And maybe that wasn't good leadership. Maybe Moses needed a better map or something. But he couldn't get them to the promised land. And God knew that he was going to hold Moses out of the promised land because of some of the attitudes, some of the things that Moses did along the way. And Moses knew that he wasn't going to enter the promised land. So here we come to the last 30 days of Moses' life. On the last 30 days of his life, the Israelites were camped on the plains of Moab, and they could literally see the promised land. It was within sight of them. So just a few miles away, they could see it. But on this last 30 days, this last encampment, this is where Moses knew he had to do his final work for God. And his final work was this. The people who he led out of Egypt, the people who he led out of captivity, were all dead now. 40 years of wandering in the desert, that generation died off, and 2 more generations rose during that time. And so the original generation that died, they knew the law, they knew the things that God had brought them through, they knew some of those lessons, but these new generations didn't. And so Moses said in these last 30 days, I have to reiterate the law. I have to remind people of what we went through, and I have to make sure that their heart and their spirits are ready to go in and possess the promised land and the blessings that God has for them. So that takes us to Deuteronomy chapter 6. So let me read Deuteronomy chapter 6 to you. I'm reading out of the New International Version. We're going to read through the whole chapter because it's important, and then we're going to go back through, look at how to love God, and pull some ideas that Moses leaves for us out of this passage. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 1. These are the commands, decrees, and laws the Lord your God directed me to teach you, to observe in the land that you are crossing the Jordan to possess, so that you, your children, and their children after them may fear the Lord your God as long as you live, by keeping all his decrees and commands that I give you, and so that you may enjoy long life. Hear, Israel, be careful to obey, so that it may go well with you, and that you may increase greatly in a land flowing with milk and honey, just as the Lord your God of your ancestors promised you. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, and when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the doorframes of your houses and on your gates. When the Lord your God brings you into the land he swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and to Jacob, to give you, a land with large, flourishing cities that you did not build, houses filled with all kinds of good things that you did not provide, wells you did not dig, and vineyards and olive gardens you did not plant. Then when you eat and are satisfied, be careful that you do not forget the Lord, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. Fear the Lord your God, serve him only, and take your oaths in his name. Do not follow other gods, the gods of the people around you. For the Lord your God who is among you is a jealous God, and his anger will burn against you, and he will destroy you from the face of the land. Do not put the Lord your God to the test as you did at Massah. Be sure to keep the commands of the Lord your God and the stipulations and decrees he has given you. Do what is right and good in the Lord's sight, so that it may go well with you, and you may go in and take over the good land the Lord promised on oath to your ancestors, thrusting out all your enemies before you, as the Lord said. In the future, when your son asks you, what is the meaning of the stipulations, decrees, and laws the Lord our God commanded you? You tell him, we were slaves of Pharaoh in Egypt, but the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand. Before our eyes, the Lord sent signs and wonders, great and terrible, on Egypt and Pharaoh and his whole household. But he brought us out from there to bring us in and give us the land he promised on oath to our ancestors. The Lord commanded us to obey all these decrees and to fear the Lord our God, so that we might always prosper and be kept alive, as is the case today. And if we are careful to obey all this law before the Lord our God, as he has commanded us, that will be our righteousness. So Moses, at the end here, he's given this speech. If you can imagine this, Moses is standing up in front of the children of Israel, in front of his congregation, so to speak, the people he's leading, and he says, folks, here's what you got to remember again. And at the end of this particular speech, Moses says, someday your sons, your daughters, your children are going to ask you, hey, what does all this mean? Why are we following these laws? Why did we do this? Moses says, you tell them about God and how he delivered you out of slavery in Egypt, and how he brought you out of Egypt to bring you in to his fold and to give you the land that he promised. And he says, the Lord commanded us to obey all these decrees. The Lord commanded us to obey all these decrees. So what is the decree that Moses is talking about here? He tells us. So let's go back to verse 5. Here is the command phrase for this entire passage. Right? So Moses sets up all this stuff, and here is the exact command that Moses is talking about when he says to obey these commands. Verse 5 tells us, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. And if you remember to the New Testament, when Jesus was on earth, the Pharisees were trying to entrap him, and they said, Jesus, hey, what is the greatest commandment? Jesus repeated this. He said to love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your strength. So Moses gives us that first command here. And this is what we're supposed to be following. We're simply supposed to love God. Doesn't that sound good? Doesn't that sound refreshing to you? We don't have to worry about the complexities. We don't have to worry about all the difficulties. We don't have to worry about what does God want for my life? What decision does God want me to make? What ministry am I supposed to get involved with? We can talk through those things, but the primary focus of our life, the primary commandment that we are supposed to be following and obeying, is love God. Love God with everything you have. Every bit of strength, every resource your mind can muster, every emotion that you can pull together. Love God. Keep it simple in 2021. Love God. And I know that sounds simple to do, but it's not always simple to follow, because sometimes we don't know what it means to love God. Sometimes we think doing the difficult things or making life complicated and doing all these things that add complexity and chaos to our lives, we think, oh, those are the things that allow me to love God. And those are probably true. Some of those things probably do help you to love God. But let's take a look at what Moses tells us right here in this passage on how we should be loving God. So, point number 1 in how to love God is this: teach your family to love God. Take a look at verse 7. Verse 7 says, impress them on your children. It goes on to say, talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the doorframes of your houses and on your gates. We are supposed to be teaching our families to love God. When we talk about loving God, when we tell our families and our kids and our brothers and our sisters, our mother and father, when we tell people about how much we love God and how important it is for them to love God, that is honoring to God. We don't talk about things that aren't important. We don't try to convince people of things that aren't important. We don't spend time elaborating on things that aren't important. But Moses says to do that, to spend the time, to elaborate, to talk about loving God, and to teach our families and our children to love God. In fact, the way he says it in verse 7 is this: impress them on your children. So the definition for the word impress is to apply pressure to something until it molds and forms into the shape that you desire. I love that word picture, to impress the idea that we should be loving God on our children. We need to impress that on their lives, on their hearts, and on their spirits, so it molds them to love God in the way He deserves to be loved. We should be talking about these things at home. When we have people over for lunch or for dinner, our friends and our family, we should be talking about loving God with them. When we go out and we're in the marketplace and we're transacting business, or we're at work and things like that, we should be talking about our coworkers and other people about loving God. It should be on our minds that much. And let me point something out. When Moses talks about this stuff, especially the stuff about your family, he's implying that you should be doing that. You, mothers and fathers, aunts and uncles, grandparents, you are supposed to be impressing those things on your families. It is your primary job and your responsibility to teach your families to love God. Note that Moses doesn't say, hey, you should make sure your kids get to church so that the youth pastor can tell your kids how to love God. Moses doesn't say, make sure you take your kids to VBS so the children's ministry department can teach your kids how to love God. Those things are important, and we should do those things, but they are not the primary teachers and disciplers and impressions upon which your children should be learning. You, mothers and fathers, have a responsibility to teach your kids to love God. Don't shrink back from your responsibilities. Point number 2 is this: remember what God has done for you. Remember what God has done. Look at verse 12. In fact, let's start at verse 10. When the Lord your God brings you into the land He swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give you a land with large, flourishing cities that you did not build, and houses filled with all kinds of things you did not provide, with wells you did not dig, with vineyards and olive gardens that you did not plant, then you will eat and be satisfied. What Moses is saying here is God will pour the blessings out on your life, and God does pour blessings out on your life. And when you see those blessings, they will be so great, they will be so overwhelming, they will be so incredible that you can't take credit for them. You can't say, I did this because of the sweat of my brow, because of the labor of my hands, because of the brains that I have, the smarts that I've employed. You can't take credit for those blessings. And when you enjoy those blessings that God has bestowed upon you, verse 12 says this: be careful that you do not forget the Lord your God. Remember what God has done for you. Yep, 2020 was a pretty tough, difficult year, but we need to remember what God did for us. We need to remember the blessings that were there in spite of the difficulties. And this morning we have this amazing opportunity to remember God through one of my favorite things, and that's the act of taking communion. So Taylor asked you earlier to go grab something, a cracker, a piece of bread, but basically something that you can chew for the bread element. And also go grab some water, some juice, whatever you have, something you can drink for the blood element. And as I thought about this idea of remembering God, and I think about taking this little cracker that represents Christ's body, when we put it in our mouth, we chew it up. And we break it up. And we do that so we can break this food down. It can go into our body. We can digest it. And that chewing and breaking up of this element can release nutrients into our body. In a similar fashion, Christ's body was broken for you. It was broken and destroyed and shredded so that the healing that he paid for could be released to us. Physical healing, but more importantly, spiritual, emotional, and mental healing for us. Would you take your bread and would you remember Christ's body being broken for you this morning? And when I think about the liquid element or the drinking element that represents Christ's blood, yes, we have to eat to get some nourishment, but the human body can go without food for a long, long time. The human body cannot go without water or liquid for very long at all before it starts to break down and die. Water is the thing that our bodies are made of. Water is the thing that sustains life in us. And in a similar fashion, when Christ died on the cross, he shed his blood for us so that his blood could sustain our lives. Not our physical lives, but our spiritual lives. The thing that will live forever, his blood paid the price so that our spiritual life could be born in him and we could be adopted into his family and we could spend eternity with him, worshiping him someday. What an incredible sacrifice. What an incredible thing we get to remember today as we celebrate communion. So would you take and drink with me this morning? We're going to have a brief time of worship. And during this time, would you just remember what God did for you through his sacrifice of his son, Jesus?
I took a breath, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. For I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. And oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Ooh. I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. And oh, it chases me 99. Oh, I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Ooh, there's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, there's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. Oh, there's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. And oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. And oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God.
Doesn't it feel good to remember what God did for you? Can you see how just remembering that and just meditating on that and thinking about the blessings that God bestowed on us, the blessings that we couldn't earn on our own, the blessings we couldn't provide for ourselves, just remembering those things helps us to love God. The third point that Moses talks about to help us demonstrate our love for God is this: worship God. Worship God. We talk about how important it is to love God with our kids. We teach them about that. We remember what God has done for us. And as we remember those things, it leads us into an attitude of worshiping God. Listen to what verse 14 says. Do not follow other gods, the gods of the people around you. In today's day and age, because of social media, because of regular media, because so many things have the ability to influence us, it's easy to get carried off. It's easy to drift away and to start to worship other things. And let me help define what worship is. Worship is just where you spend your time, your energy, where you devote yourself, where you devote your resources. That's what worship is. So worship can be working out. Some people worship working out. Worship can be sports. Some people worship that. God is saying, worship me. Above all else, above everything else, worship me. Because I am the source of your blessings. I am the source of your life, and I deserve to be worshiped. Moses calls for us to worship God. He says, do not follow other gods, the gods of these lands, the gods of the people around you. There is only one God. Only one God deserves our worship. Only one God deserves our praise and our adoration. So, in the vein of simplicity, we're going to spend another couple minutes just getting to worship God. Right there in the comfort of your home. Right there on your couch, at your kitchen table, in your bed, wherever you are, would you just worship God this morning as we watch this video together?
Mountains just before a storm. The air changes to cool from what once was warm. There's a sense of something big that refuses to be contained, something immensely powerful that will not be constrained. Even the animals can sense its presence, looking around and listening keen. They're aware of something stirring, but not aware of what it means. The first drop of rain starts falling, first small, then quickly large, and electricity fills the air. Your hair stands as if it's met its charge. There's an aching in the earth, tension in the sky. Then lightning flashes through the air and thunder crackles nigh. Or have you ever watched the ocean as the tide starts to rise? The gently lapping waves grow and quickly increase their stride, and suddenly, magically, right before your very eyes, what was once calm and tranquil gains magnitude of size. The waves transform from rolling to roaring. The sea's now awake when moments ago it was snoring. You can't keep from staring at this fierce and awesome change. Wondering in wonderment about its scope and range, but all the while, a little fear sneaks its way into your mind. You're anxiously awaiting change and what's in store to find. A storm isn't brewing, a tidal wave isn't about to break, but nevertheless a change is coming and everything is at stake. My question for you this morning as we're here together contemplating is if you'll embrace the Spirit's change or find yourself just waiting. Waiting for another sermon to teach you something new, or watching others volunteer without ever saying, me too. Are you waiting just for the right feeling or the right opportunity or maybe the right season? Because friend, if the Spirit is stirring in your heart, do you need any other reason? In Jesus' parable of the sower, he describes different types of ground and growing. Is your heart the type of soil that's ready for the seedy sowing? Let's resolve together as a body right here, right now, that will accept whatever change and in humble surrender, bow. I let go and surrender and give into the flow of the outpour love that I can't contain on my own. My heart is ready. Let these feet be ready. Slow and steady, I'm ready to run. Slow and steady, oh, this heart is ready. Slow and steady, I am ready to run. Hope is on the horizon. Weary world, behold your promised Messiah. Angels, let your song begin. Here comes heaven. Christ is born in Bethlehem. Here comes heaven. Sinner, wait no more. Love has broken the silence. Come, let us adore. The Savior is with us. Angels, let your song begin. Here comes heaven. Christ is born in Bethlehem. Here comes heaven. Here comes heaven. Oh, now behold his glory, glory in the highest. All the earth rejoice, for Christ is born. Now behold his glory, glory in the highest. All the earth rejoice, for Christ is born. Oh yeah. And over all who mourn, breaks the dawn of salvation. Darkness reigns no more, for Jesus is greater. He is greater. Oh, angels, let your song begin. Here comes heaven. Christ is born in Bethlehem. Here comes heaven. Angels, let your song begin. Here comes heaven. All creation worships him. Here comes heaven. Here comes heaven. Here comes heaven.
Keep it simple in 2021. Love God. Love God simply, simply love God. And remember the 3 ways Moses tells us to love God. Teach your family to love God. Remember what God did for you. And worship God. The rest of this week, stay in this mode of worshiping God, so we can love Him together as a family of believers in 2021. Look forward to seeing you next week, 9:30, right back here, Facebook, YouTube, however you're tuning in. Be blessed.